I'd like to call this meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. For the record, today's date is October 24th, 2022. My name is Richard Parker. I'm the Planning and Zoning Chair. And I'd like to welcome everyone out tonight and ask you to turn off all your electronic devices before the meeting begins. This is a public meeting and it is being recorded. If you want to speak to any matter that comes before us tonight, you will be given a chance. Our time limit for comments is 3 minutes. Please do not repeat comments made by others. Elected officials appoint this commission, which has 6 regular members and 3 alternates. This commission is an advisory board for the City Council, and we only make recommendations. City Council has all legislative decisions for the city and has final authority to rezone the property. So this commission, we do not rezone anything. All we do is make a recommendation. So whatever is said here tonight can be reversed to go the other way once it gets to City Council. We just make a recommendation and they make their own decision. 5 members make up a quorum. And Jamie, I'd like for you to do a roll call right now to make sure we have a quorum.
Sure. Chair Parker.
President.
Vice Chair Kirkpatrick.
Here.
Member Beasley.
Present.
Member Black.
Here.
Member Roan.
Here.
Member Wright is absent. Patricia Gable is absent. Member Nelson. Here. And now Member Rayner.
Here.
Okay, so we have a quorum. First item of business is to approve the minutes for our last 2 meetings. We have 2 minutes to approve. I'd like to approve them separately. The first is September 26th, our regular meeting of 2022. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor here say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Next set of minutes was a special meeting called October the 10th, 2022. You have those minutes before you. Is there any discussion or questions? If not, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Have a motion?
Second.
Second. All in favor of the minutes from October 24th, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
October 10th.
I'm sorry. I put it under instead of, okay, October the 10th. Today's October 24th, sorry. All right, we have 5 rezonings tonight. The first one is rezoning 22-17. Mr. Oliver Caja, applicant, to present a request to rezone properties from medium density residential, MDR, and medium industrial, MI, to medium industrial, LU, MI-LU, limited use. These properties are located at the terminus of South Anthony Court and on the westerly side of Keck Drive, south of Anthony Road, addressed as 2347 Keck Road and 0 Anthony Road, 0 South Anthony Court, and 0 Keck Drive, consisting of Alamance County tax identification numbers 120225, 120226, 120240, 120241, 120242, 120245, 120259, and 120277. You have the floor. Identify yourself.
Evening, Chair Parker. My name is Paul Koontz. I'm not Oliver. Oliver sends his regards. He couldn't make it tonight. He got married this weekend, and he is on his honeymoon. So congratulations to him. The rest of the team that was here last time we were here is also over here in the corner, Ryan Frazier, Emmerich Mod from Vision Real Estate Partners, and Charlie Dow and Jessica Escobedo from Bowler Engineering, who are available to answer any questions that you might have. The last time we were here, we presented you a list of limited uses. We have cut down the number of uses that were available by 10 last time. And of course, in our conversation last time we were here, we talked about going and having a neighborhood meeting. Well, we did that. Last Monday night at 6 o'clock, we had a meeting out at Baptist Temple Church with the community. David Carter and Patrick Carter were kind enough to give us that space. And one thing that we did before the meeting to kind of take an extra step to reach out to the community was we went beyond the required notice. The required notice area only went to the near side of Keck Drive, but we got all of the addresses for the far side of Keck Drive and noticed all of those neighbors as well, many of whom showed up at that neighborhood meeting. And we had 40, 45 people there, met for a couple of hours, really had a great conversation with that neighborhood. Some of it was use related, some of it was kind of site related, because those are the normal questions that comes up. What happens if you develop? You know, what's going to happen with runoff? We know all of that's going to happen during site approval, plan approval, and those things are kind of down the road, but we addressed all those concerns as they came up the best we could if we get approval on the rezoning. As a result of that meeting and what we discussed with that group, we have submitted a revised list of uses, which is the October 18, 2022 list that Oliver put together, and I hope you all have that in your package. What we did was we reduced the number by another 10, so we were down to 35 potential uses on that site that would be the only limited uses that we could use. So, and the list up there is the ones that are marked off. The initial list, just as a reminder, we had taken off antenna collection, major and minor, passenger terminal, telecom tower, automotive repair, parking lot facility, automotive towing, fuel oil, gas energy conversion, and wind energy conversion. That was the initial 10. The next group that kind of resulted from this meeting was broadcast studio, government administrative office, Coliseum convention, fire EMS, helicopter landing pad, post office, school vocational, convenience store, event venue, parking structure, theater, and truck stop. So take all those off, we're left with the 35 uses that are on our October 18 letter. I think that we were able to address many of the concerns of the neighbors out there. We had a very positive meeting. You know, I think our team learned a lot of little things, right, about from the folks that use those intersections every day. And I know these things will come up later as we get down into site plan review and DOT, but they were tremendously forthcoming. We had a great meeting, felt like it was very supportive. Glad to see that staff is recommended in favor of this. So we are here making the application, and we're available to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, before we ask any questions of anybody, does anybody here on the commission have a conflict with this item?
No.
No conflicts, okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Coons.
Thank you.
Before you sit down, are there any questions for
Yes.
Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Okay?
There was a lot of people here last time. What were their main concerns? What were their top 5 concerns that you learned in that meeting, and how did you address those concerns?
So some of those were more site as opposed to use.
Right.
That's what it comes down to. So we have some conceptual plans that we
So
put out.
so you do have a conceptual plan, so the neighbors know where their building is going to be located tentatively.
Absolutely. And then how things like slope are going to be addressed and where the main traffic flows are going to be, because obviously that's one. And I know that's not all the detail that you guys can necessarily consider tonight, but like any truck traffic that comes in and out of here is going to come out in and out of Anthony Court and not off of Keck. There will be an entrance off of Keck before you get to the houses for car traffic only and as far as emergency services.
Do you have a layout you shared a layout or sort of
The concept plan,
concept plan? You
Right.
shared that with the neighbors.
we did.
Did you bring it with you tonight?
We did not, simply because it was not part of the rezoning process.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and the key there was, we also were able to show, there's a 40-foot buffer all around the property. But when you really look at slopes and grade and where the berms have to be, the actual distance between the back of their property line and where the paving and the building start is more like 250, 300 plus feet.
Right.
So those are the questions,
So-
right? Because of the nature of that property, and you can kind of tell by the way it was initially zoned, is the part closer to Anthony Court is flatter. So you have to use the flat part to put the buildings on. And obviously, as you go down towards Alamance Creek, that's all going to be wetlands, and you're not going to use that.
Was there any stone left unturned, anything that there would still be complaints about?
I really don't think so. You know, like I said, we spent a couple of hours, had a group presentation to everybody, broke up into 5 different kind of subsets so that everybody could have direct one-on-one conversations. And I think the biggest thing was, and we asked what the number one issue was, what is it not going to be? And you guys have probably heard this one. We just want to make sure that there's not going to be apartments out there. Was their number one comment to us. So that's something that we clearly can assure them and is not on the use list in that zone.
Thank you.
So the only egress off of Keck Road will be for automobiles, no trucks.
Right.
So the trucks will come in and out of Anthony Court, and cars could too, I guess,
Absolutely.
but there will be an egress off of Keck Road, I assume up toward the northern edge,
That's correct. Before you get to any of the houses.
way before you get to the house.
Yeah. And Anthony Court is obviously developed as a kind of a small industrial park.
Right.
And it was interesting to, since we hosted it at Baptist Temple, they're on a completely different site with a completely separate entrance. So they are not impacted by any of that traffic, other than, of course, what will go on Anthony Road.
Right.
And the developer, of course, will have to meet all DOT requirements and all the city of Burlington specs in terms of setback, buffer, planning, and wetlands.
Are there any other questions from the commission?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
because of its close proximity to the airport, are there any concerns as far as the airport about what would go on there? Are there restrictions or things that will be met because of the airspace?
You mean height restrictions?
Well, whatever restrictions that would be imposed by the airport facility, have they been taken into consideration?
I haven't talked to Dan Danley about that in particular or their board, but certainly all the height requirements would be. You know, in looking at the uses that are out there, I can't imagine them having objection to any of the uses.
I just didn't know if it had been brought up to the airport.
No.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I had just one question, once you're done with the commissioners.
Go ahead.
Was there any additional conversation with that out parcel, whether or not they were interested in joining the rezoning?
No, maybe Ryan can address that better than I can, but
Are there improvements on that land?
Brian Fraser, Vision Real Estate Partners. We spoke directly with the father-in-law, the owner of that site. The owner could not be there, but we spoke with his father-in-law, who actually owns the parcel off of Keck, right behind it. So then there's the piece that we own in between that. And the comment we made to them was that that middle piece is going to remain green space. We're not touching that. There are no plans for that. And that was really the most important thing to them. And they were happy with that response.
And there are no improvements on that piece of land?
On their piece?
Yes.
No,
No
they will continue on that, and there will be no improvements.
Okay. Thank you, Jamie. All right, that concludes our questions for now for the applicant. We'll ask if there are any, is there anyone here tonight that would like to speak to this matter who hasn't already been heard? We heard most everybody the first go around. And we have all those comments in our minutes. Okay. Were there any phone calls regarding this rezoning? Any new phone calls, Jamie? Conrad?
Just basic inquiries, general inquiries about the process when those signs were put up, but no written comments opposing this or in favor of were received by staff.
Okay. Will this zoning change affect any adjacent properties?
No,
Um,
no, it is only going to, if approved, it will only change the zoning of the properties that are part of the application.
Okay. And what is your recommendation?
Staff is recommending approval of the rezoning request as noted in the staff report. It is inconsistent with the future land use designation. However, it is in support and consistent with the Big Alamance Creek study, which identifies this area in terms of economic development opportunities. So staff is recommending consistent with option number 2 in your consistency statement sheet.
Okay. Are there any further questions? Is there a motion?
Make a motion to recommend approval of the request to rezone property from medium density residential and medium industrial to medium industrial limited use. Properties are located at the terminus of South Anthony Court on the westerly side of Keck Drive, South Anthony Road, addressed as 2347 Keck Road, 0 Anthony Road, 0 South Anthony Court, and 0 Keck Drive, and consisting of Alamance County tax identification numbers 120225, 120226, 120240, 120241, 120242, 120245, 120259, and 120277. While the request is inconsistent with the future land use map in section 4 land use of the comprehensive plan and a portion of the area is supposed to be rural residential agriculture, the request is consistent with the portion that calls for the area to be general industrial. The request also supports the 2018 Big Alamance Creek area study, which identifies lands that may be suitable to transition from low-density single-family land use patterns to some other mix of residential and non-residential land uses for economic development purposes. The Commission finds that the request is compatible with existing industrial uses in the area. The action is reasonable and in the public interest of the comprehensive plan, encourages a sustainable balance of land uses. The request is compatible with the existing zoning and land uses in the area, and the request is supported by the 2018 Big Alamance Creek area study.
Do I have a second?
Second. I'll be out.
All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Coons, for having such a positive
Productive.
neighborhood meeting.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
I really appreciate that.
well, appreciate all your work too.
Can we just do a quick roll call if you don't mind?
Okay, go ahead.
Chair Parker,
Approve.
Vice Chair Beasley, Vice Chair Kirkpatrick.
He can have
Sorry, Mr. Beasley, and sorry, Mr. Kirkpatrick. Chair Beasley.
Am I here?
Commission Member Beasley. Chair Black. Commission Member Black. Commission Member Black.
Approved.
Oh, sorry, Commission Member Nelson. Approved. Commission Member Rowe.
Approved.
And Commission Member Rayner. Thank you. My apologies.
Okay. Next item on our agenda is item number 4, rezoning. We should shut that door. Shut that door, Tom. I need to do something with that too. Okay.
Good evening, Commissioner. My name is Brad Moore.
Rezoning 22-18, Mr. Brad Moore, applicant, to present a request to rezone properties for medium-density residential, light industrial LI, and office institutional OI to office institutional-limited use OI-LU. Properties are located the north side of West Front Street between Parish Street and Saddle Club Road, addressed as 2635 West Front Street, and consisting of Alamance County identification numbers 115754, 115864, and 115865. Mr. Moore.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Brad Moore. I'm the University Architect at Elon University. I'm joined by Dr. Jeff Stein, the VP for Strategic Initiatives. These three parcels are currently used by the university for low-density research farm. We want to continue to use it as in that manner. But right now, the zoning for this is residential and light industrial, which is not really compatible with what we're using it for. But also the properties to the east and west are also already currently O&I. And so this request is just to make this consistent along this, the north end of the road there, and allow it to conserve for the college use that we have planned.
And in this particular situation, you're requesting a limited use, which would just be for the college and university uses only.
That's correct.
Okay.
So none of that's on this application? Oh, wait. No? Still isn't on there, is it? We don't have the proposed uses on here, do we?
It's in the staff report, and it is on page 1 of the staff report, above the table. You'll see listed number 1 in terms of the principal uses that they're requesting. It's college or university there. Keep going back.
This way?
Keep going one more page.
Oh.
Right here.
Oh, okay, just the one thing.
Yes.
You don't have 45?
We don't have 45.
That's great.
The university is kind of a blanket, it can be lots of things under it, so.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Before we get into the questions, does anybody here have any conflicts with this item? Somebody who worked for the university? I went there, but that's a long time ago. Still college back then.
My husband works for the university,
That's good.
but I don't, that's not.
That's fine, that's fine. Yeah, there's no financial attachment. Okay. Did you have a neighborhood meeting at all?
We did not. Notification went out to the neighbors, and I have corresponded with one of the neighbors representing my project.
Okay.
What was that correspondence?
They were just interested to know why we were rezoning. I just explained the exact same thing, that the current zoning doesn't really allow for the research farm that we currently have, and to keep it consistent with the neighbors to the east and to the west of the property. And he was very appreciative and thanking me for that.
Are there any questions from the commission concerning this matter?
And the intent to continue using it as is?
Yes, so we wanted to continue to serve as a research farm. We will do some development there, maybe some small residential for some students who want to live and work on the farm, as well as maybe a research or classroom type building for local kids that maybe want to come out to the farm and learn about sustainable farming. So, but the majority of it is going to be a low density.
So you will do some farming out there?
We do. We currently have 2 greenhouses out on the site and we'll continue to use those.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
do you anticipate, excuse me, Mr.
Go ahead.
Chairman.
Mr. Watson.
Do you anticipate, I know that the university has golf carts and stuff that service the president's place at the Alamance Country Club and going up and down the road. Do you anticipate tractors or anything, access? Okay, good, thank you.
Okay, have a seat for now, and we'll see if there are any public comments. Is there anyone here that would like to speak to this matter?
I'd like to ask you questions.
Okay, come on up, give us your name.
Yes, my name's Sean Barfield. I own the house right across the street from where the residence is now that you guys own. And so I guess my question is, are you guys gonna demolish that house? Is that in the plans? How much construction is gonna be going? You know, because right now, where my residence is, it's kind of removed, you know, because all the activity is up the street a little bit and kind of out of the way. So I guess my biggest concern is how much activity is going to be right across the street from my residence, and what are the future plans for that?
We really haven't got that far in the plan. You're right, that house is there. We really haven't thought about whether we're going to continue to use that or take that down.
It's a nice house too, though, I mean, if you were looking for somewhere to, house the kids, but okay, that's my biggest concern, because I'm right across the street from there, so, just didn't know how much construction was gonna be taking place directly across the street that will affect my tenants and that kind of thing, so. Yeah. So,
Okay,
okay.
thank you, Sean.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else here that would like to speak to this matter? Any final questions from the commission?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
farming as opposed to ranching, will there be animals?
There's no plans unless it's a small animal, maybe a few chickens or a goat or something, but it's not.
Can't have chickens in the city of Burlington.
Okay, well, then we won't have chickens then.
No chickens in Burlington.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
So,
there- no
yeah,
cattle.
it's really good for sustainable farming, not
Not ranching.
not ranching.
Thank you.
If you put up residences, you have like a number of, can envision out there?
The current discussion has been a limited number, maybe 25 to 30 students living in small sort of residential developments.
One more quick question, if I could.
Go ahead.
Just on one more thing. Are you planning on doing like a lot more entrances out to Front Street? Are you gonna keep all the traffic kind of up to where it is now?
The current plan is yes, to use that current entrance.
Okay, all right, good deal. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions from the commission concerning this matter? Is there a motion?
Staff recommendation. Staff recommendation.
No, I'm sorry.
We are recommending the rezoning for this case. As noted, also it is inconsistent with the future land use designation. So you've got option number 2 in your consistency statement sheet as well. Staff finds that the use is obviously compatible with what is occurring on the site, and the expansion of that, we are recommending approval.
In that case, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to recommend approval of the request to rezone properties from medium-density residential, light industrial, and office institutional to office institutional limited use. The properties are located on the north side of West Front Street between Paris Street and South Club Road, addressed as 2635 West Front Street, and consisting of Alamance County tax identification numbers 115-754, 115-864, and 115-865. While the request is inconsistent with the future land use map in section 4, land use of the comprehensive plan, in that it calls for this area to have rural residential agricultural uses, the request is compatible with the existing institutional uses occurring on the property. This action is reasonable and in the public interest in that the comprehensive plan encourages a substantial balance of land uses. The request is compatible with the existing zoning and land uses in the area.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Let's do a roll call, Jamie.
All right, Chair Parker,
Approve?
Vice Chair Kirkpatrick,
Approved.
Commission Member Beasley,
Approve.
Commission Member Roan,
Approve.
Commission Member Black,
Approve.
Commission Member Nelson,
Approved.
and Commission Member Rayner.
Approved.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Item number 5, rezoning 22-019. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm gonna read what versus. Yes.
Are you done? Are you done? Okay.
How you say your last name?
Gauthier.
Gauthier. That's French.
Baby.
Okay. I consulted with one of my staff members today, and she said, I think it's French. So Mr. Gauthier, applicant, is to present a request to rezone property from office institutional to light industrial. Property is located on the west side of Huckman Mill Road, southwest of the intersection of Grand Oaks Boulevard and Huckman Mill Road, addressed as 1559 Huckman Mill Road, and consisting of Alamance County Tax Identification Number 107153. Mr. Gauthier.
Well, I appreciate the time. I am the applicant, Darryl Gauthier. And my honeymoon was 26 years ago, so I had to make the meeting. So as you can see here, there are 2 out of 5 or 6 requests that are trying to find light industrial land. We have a lot of residents that like to live here, but jobs are important too. So somehow, some of us see that the light industrial land brings employment, and that's the goal here, is to take the 14, 15 acres of land and turn it into a light industrial park of some sort. I have, with my engineering firm in Elon, I have a need for 4 acres of it. We have been very lucky with COVID. Our competitors out of Germany and out of China are having a very hard time supporting the United States with spare parts for pharmaceutical machines. And that's what we do. We design replacement spare parts for pharmaceutical machines. And we need to expand. We have a facility in Utah also. We want to expand the Elon site and move it to the Burlington site and employ more machinists and engineers and designers to support the local economy, but to deliver globally. Our closest customer is in Wilson, North Carolina, but we're delivering to Germany this week. We're delivering around the world to keep vitamin machines running and pharmaceutical machines running around the world. We've been in Elon for approximately 23 years. We've outgrown our facility there and have been patiently looking for land. This land on the surface is office and institutional, but it is surrounded by Kirkpatrick, which looks very industrial. And the long-term plan, as I understand it, for Burlington is for this land to be light industrial. So it's nice to be swimming with the current and not against it. And that's, we look forward to developing that site.
Did you have a neighborhood meeting?
We actually didn't. It was our understanding that the city of Burlington would be notifying the neighbors in that general area. And there are, I actually would have to think, the closest resident is probably Ethan Point, I guess, something like that. So it's quite a ways. You can see the industrial surrounding that property, Kirkpatrick, and So the answer is straightforward, no, we did not speak with any of the neighbors, there aren't any.
Okay. Before we move on, Ken, are there any conflicts concerning this item? Right.
I do not have a conflict per se, but my last name is Kirkpatrick. I am the vice president of Triangle Grading Paving, which is the adjoining property. I have no financial interest in this whatsoever.
Did I mention what a nice neighbor they were?
You did mention that about twice. You were listening to the roll call, I guess. No, I don't think there's any conflict, Mr. Kirkpatrick. Are there any other questions for the petitioner from the commission? Anybody?
Any idea what's gonna be used on the other 11 acres?
Well, we would like to build an industrial park, a light industrial park. Richie Jones had approached me that a automobile company of some sort had approached him on a site. It's a beautiful location in terms of immediate access to 4085 along University Park to the left and Grand Oaks to the right. So I would see that there could be a HVAC company there, electrical, plumbing, because it's in such close proximity to the immediate access to the city of Burlington and also 4085. It would be a good location if I had an HVAC company or something along that line that services customers, a nice dispatch location. So no one has approached me. Technically, we are not going to close on the land for a month and a half. So I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but the answer is there's no other plans right now. But I personally see the need, and other people see the need also for light industrial land. So we think that it could create a nice little mecca for light industrial property.
How do you envision this to look at more industrial park, or is it going to be just a lot?
Well, we have quite a few customers in Ireland, and Ireland calls themselves a industrial estate. And so we're thinking about going in that direction to call it an industrial estate, where you have side, a little bit like behind Harley Davidson and Darrell Allen and what is now Hospice, and there's just a nice group of different light industrial companies there. So that's kind of the vision, is something but smaller. I mean, this is only 14 acres, and some of it is, the terrain is a little bit of a challenge, so it's probably going to work out to be about 12 acres or so when it's all said and done. But I think it would be ultimately independent light industrial facilities to service the community. All these residential houses that are coming in need heating and air conditioning service and plumbing and electricians and those kind of things. So likely that would be a candidate to have a facility there. With the Toyota plant coming in Julian Airport Road, I mean, from that spot, that's only about 20 or 30 minutes away, 30 maximum. So it's a really nice location in that respect to be able to be Greensboro, Raleigh, Julian Road, Airport Road, those kinds of things. But just to me, there's just a need for light industrial and the good paying jobs that come along with that sector.
Any other questions? Okay, have a seat for a minute, and let's see if there's anybody from the public who would like to speak. So I'll ask now, is there anyone here tonight that would like to speak to this matter?
I'm Chuck Short, and we live across the street.
Yes, sir.
The three parcels, the long ones right across. So we got three houses across the street.
Sorry,
And
I misrepresented that. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
Oh, it's okay.
Your driveway is so long.
Yeah. And I'm just sort of gathering information, so I don't, I don't really know what to ask at this point, but I was curious as to what was happening, so.
I'd be fine with providing a little bit more information on what we do and how we do it. It's a very clean industry. It's design engineering and manufacturing inside a building with CNC machines, lathes and mills to produce these spare parts that allow encapsulation machines. Our encapsulation machine itself produces 2,100 capsules per minute. So, like for example, maybe you've heard of Nestle. They have 3 of our machines. Companies like Amneal are producing gabapentin, which is a pharmaceutical grade material, in their facility. 2 of our machines are in their Long Island plant. But in general, we just export. We really help the balance of trade of spare parts and money between the United States and Germany and other countries. So we take a part or a machine that may have been designed in Germany, and we'll reverse engineer that in North Carolina, produce the spare parts for that to keep, our customer base is Johnson & Johnson, Merck, Pfizer, Eli Lilly. We're just a top Fortune 100 customer base, and we help keep those companies running. And it's a very clean, quiet, everything's inside our building, manufacturing spare parts. We'd be happy to have you come over sometime and see one of our machines running as a test run.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. You're welcome.
Is there anyone else here tonight that would like to speak to this matter? Did you have any phone calls concerning this?
No, we didn't receive any calls.
Yeah, so we had to do general.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to address Mr. Peltier. When you were talking about industrial estate, is your vision trying to keep a lot of the trees and stuff, an area, and build around that so you have a lot of cover, basically still blocking out that's your idea, concept of working within the trees and stuff? That's
My goal to keep,
Sorry.
I had a surveyor go through and I asked him to mark all trees that are over 24 inches. Because I wanted to try to keep as much mature growth as possible. So the answer is yes. I would like to maintain a feel of nature in that area.
Thank you, sir.
I have one more question. I'm glad to hear that part, because you're just beyond the part where there are a lot of housing developments, et cetera. I'm wondering if that were to move farther south, if you think that you would be compatible with housing other forms of development in the area. Right now, you're a pioneer. Do you think the light industrial park or estate, whatever it is, aesthetically would please other people who maybe want to build houses out there or other developments?
In terms of the use of the land, the light industrial land,
And the way you want to develop it?
I have a bit of a hearing deficiency in my left ear. And
Let me take this off.
I didn't, thank you.
I'm just curious because there's not a lot there, as I think. If you set the tone and by building a light industrial area, I'm wondering if that will become a light industrial area for Burlington rather than other uses. Would housing feel compatible with what you're building? I mean, you're saying you're trying to preserve trees, and if it's done nicely, I think it could, but the question is, what's it going to look like?
About 4 years ago, I sold a facility in New Jersey that I owned that was part of a planned urban development. And I'm not sure if Burlington has a planned urban development, but it's a fantastic idea where you could have, in let's say 6 blocks, you could have you have manufacturing facilities that have certain rules and regulations. There's a fire station, there was an elementary school, there were townhouses and houses, and so you could walk down the sidewalk to go to work, those kinds of things. And so I feel that there's a need for that. I think if people can walk to work and walk home for lunch kind of thing, it's a great thing. So to me, that's the whole concept. We will be required to put sidewalks in. I'm all for that. I mean, we need to have a close community. Do I want to pay for it? No, but it's the cost of doing business, right? I mean, we want to have the ability to safely walk down the street. And I'm hoping that we could have some employees from Ethan Point or other areas that are close proximity as the area develops. I think it's important to reduce your commute. Get the hours back in your day.
Any other questions from the commission? Will this zoning affect any adjacent properties?
No, sir.
Okay. And what is your recommendation?
Staff is recommending approval of this rezoning as it is consistent with the future land use designation. We've got option 1 in your consistency statement as our recommendation there.
Do I have a motion?
Yeah, I was looking for it, you got it?
I'll read it off the script here. Staff recommendation. I make a motion to recommend approval of the request to rezone property from office institutional OI to light industrial LI. The property is located on the west side of Huffman Mill Road, southwest of the intersection of Grand Oaks Boulevard and Huffman Mill Road. Addressed as 1559 Huffman Mill Road and consisting of Alamance County Tax Identification Number 107153. The motion is based upon the consistency of the proposed rezoning with the comprehensive plan in that the future land use map in section 4 land use of the comprehensive plan calls for this area to have business park light industrial. The request is compatible with the adjacent industrial uses. This action is reasonable and in the public interest in that the comprehensive plan calls for industrial uses in the area. The request is compatible with the existing zoning and land uses in the area.
Second.
I have a second. Have a roll call, please.
Chair Parker,
Approved.
Vice Chair Kirkpatrick,
Approved.
Commission Member Beasley,
Approved.
Commission Member Black,
Approved.
Commission Member Roan,
Approved.
Commission Member Nelson,
Approved.
and Commission Member Rayner.
Approved.
Motion is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
I would like to ask all the members who are here tonight from the public if they would restrict their comments to 0 as not to distract our members or our applicants. Our next presenter is Ms. Pat Mose, and I'm going to read this to you, okay? Item number 6, 22-202, Ms. Joyce Padmos, applicant to present a request to rezone property from medium-density residential to light industrial. Property is located on the south side of Anthony Road, south of the intersection of Hanford Road and Anthony Road, addressed as 1208 Anthony Road, and consisting of Alamance County Tax Identification Number 132180. Ms. Patmos.
Hi, thank you all for letting me talk today and present my request. I have been working on this property for a while. I'm hoping to use it for my business office, my county practice. I've been in business for over 20 years at a location on Alamance Road, which no longer suits me. The building has changed. My office is too small. My business has grown, especially through COVID, helping businesses and everything. I just really need more space. And with the boom of the bidding wars and whatnot, I had trouble finding a place to move to, and the rents were so ridiculously high that I started looking to purchase. I purchased this lot. Building costs were high, so I looked for a building that I was able to move and relocate and restore this 1950s brick bungalow that will serve my office needs greatly. The layout is perfect and I'm working on it. So I'm asking for, right now it is zoned MDR, asking for a change to light industrial due to all of the properties surrounding me. There's only 2 residential properties in that area. Both of my neighbors, the residential neighbors to the left of me and 2 behind me, are very in favor of what we've done there with the property. They compliment us greatly. For a while it was a hangout for transits, and they had trouble with that, and there was a fire on the property and whatnot, which we have all cleaned up. We've cleaned up the property, the wooded areas, so that no longer is a problem. And I have not heard anything negative from any of my neighbors in regards to this. And for right now, my main purpose is to just be able to move my office there, make a nice professional feel to it, based on the restoration that we've been doing with the brick building and whatnot. We've tried to be very careful of how we are restoring it and the property around it. So I'm hoping that I can get this request, get your recommendation.
Okay. Before we get started, ask again about any conflicts. Anybody have any conflicts with Ms. Patmos and her zoning request? No. Okay. All right. We'll open the floor up for any comments or questions. So, did you have a neighborhood meeting, or you just met with the neighbors individually, or talked with them?
No, from the time I've been, first started looking at the property, the 2 neighbors that are there, came over and talked to me about it. We even actually looked at the property next to us. We were thinking about purchasing that instead. They're really, like I said, both of them have been very supportive of what I'm doing. They've been pleased to see us cleaning up the lot and getting things done. They were, of course, everybody's been very interesting in the house move, and we were able to move it actually from the property right next to us and just come back and cut through the woods and drop it. So they were all just a part of that and watching and being very supportive and excited about it. So, I know the letters went out because I got one. I contacted all, so I know letters went out to the neighbors, but as far as I know, there isn't anything negative that I'm aware of.
Okay. Are there any questions now from the commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a quick comment. I'm glad to hear what you're doing, because the last time I talked to you and your husband, we're just talking about the property. You don't remember me, but I was mowing the yard at the Home Builders Association.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And I was trying my best to try to avert you from building a home there or putting a home there because of the area, but for business, an office like that, they have cleaned up the lot. It's very nice what they've done. I'm glad
Thank you. Thank you so
but
much.
I see no reason why this shouldn't just be just a slam dunk, because it's perfect for that area, and it's already a vast improvement.
Thank you so much.
So, Ms. Patmos, you would anticipate 1 or 2 clients at a time? No.
Yeah, usually now, since COVID, most everything is electronic.
Electronic.
And, yeah, so I'm not expecting, and
You
I
be there by
usually-
yourself?
Yeah, I have, well, during tax season, I have several part-timers, and I do have, during the fall season, I have 1 part-time by myself. So, usually there's only 1 person that deals, because I'm the final say, so I'm usually the one that's meeting with people, unless people are just dropping stuff off. So it's usually 1 or 2 people that can most of it.
Okay. Sounds fair.
Is
Okay.
there a reason that it's light industrial rather than?
I'm trying to be conform to what's around me, and what's going on in that area, and also the property owner next to me has suggested that and said that, they know that possibly down the road, not 20 years old anymore, then I might retire. And they have expressed that they might want to purchase the property at that point. So they were also suggesting the light industrial.
Okay. Any other questions from the commission? Okay, I'll ask now if there are anyone here that would like to speak to this matter tonight. Were there any phone calls concerning this matter?
Other than Ms. Patton that was clarifying the letter, I don't have anything
Okay.
particular. No written comments were received.
Will this zoning affect any adjacent parcels?
No, sir.
Okay. And what is your recommendation?
Staff is making a recommendation to approve the rezoning as it is consistent with the future land use designation and the uses within the area.
That being the case, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to recommend approval of the request to rezone property from medium density residential to light industrial. The property is located on the south side of Anthony Road, south from the intersection of Hanford Road and Anthony Road, addressed as 1208 Anthony Road, and consisting of Alamance County Tax Identification Number 132180. The motion is based upon the consistency of the proposed rezoning with the comprehensive plan, in that the future land use map in Section 4 land use of the comprehensive plan calls for this area to have general industrial uses. The request is compatible with the adjacent industrial uses. This action is reasonable and in the public interest, and that the comprehensive plan calls for industrial uses in the area. The request is compatible with the existing zoning and land uses in the area.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Have a roll call, Ms. Lawson.
Yes, sir. Chair Parker,
Approved.
Vice Chair Kirkpatrick,
Approved.
Commission Member Beasley,
Approved.
Commission Member Black,
Approved.
Commission Member Rome,
Approved.
Commission Member Nelson,
Approved.
and Commission Member Rayner.
Thank you, you're done.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Just had a quick question, if I may. The zoning sign, you see the yellow Z, what's the red Z mean? What's on the sign?
Zora.
Once we're done with the Planning and Zoning Commission, then the signs will get changed when it goes to City Council.
That means it's at the council level?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, ma'am.
Item number 7, rezoning 22-021. Our friend Mr. Ryan Moffitt, applicant, to present a request to rezone properties from office institutional and medium density residential to high density residential. Property is located on the southeast corner of the intersection Grand Oaks Boulevard and Kirkpatrick Road, addressed as 0 Kirkpatrick and 0 Grand Oaks Boulevard, consisting of Alamance County tax identification numbers 112931 and 113189. Mr. Moffitt.
Chair Parker, members of the commission, my name is Ryan Moffitt. I'm with the Vernon Law Firm at 522 South Lexington Avenue. I'm pleased to be here this evening on behalf of Grand Oaks East LLC, the entity that owns both of the subject properties. With me this evening is Dennis Eulis, the builder and a principal of Grand Oaks East LLC, and Aiden Stoltzfus, the engineer on the project. This is a request to rezone both tracks. One is within the corporate city limits, that's the corner property, and the larger tract is actually ETJ property. They are zoned office institutional medium density residential currently, and we are requesting rezoning to high density residential. Mr. Stoltzfus, Mr. Eulis have been at work on this property for some time now. I believe the first time they came and met with staff on just the 11-acre larger tract was roughly a year ago. since that time, they have gone all in. They've purchased both properties. I know you typically have applicants before you in the due diligence phase, ensuring that they get the entitlements they need for their intended use in the event it doesn't work out. But we've had enough good feedback and good work on the plan that they own the property, and we're before you with this request. Before there was the idea was for 180 apartment units. We've added the 1.15 acres of the corner tract, and it would they would be proposing 200 units, which at the high density residential density figure of 30 units an acre is substantially less than the density that would be allowed. So we're talking about less than 16 units an acre in a district that would permit 30 units an acre. So I hope you all take note of that. And just from a reasonableness standpoint, a land use standpoint, we've got a proposed use that's compatible with its surroundings. It's consistent with adjacent uses. You have the Grand Oaks Apartments across the street. You have Auburn Trace next to the Grand Oaks Apartments across the street. My understanding is that the tract also across Grand Oaks is planned or proposed for townhomes perhaps. The Alamance House is the assisted living facility. And then of course Ethan Point is also a multifamily use. And so you've got a proposed zoning district or proposed use that fits squarely within an area that consists of the same or similar uses. It's also complementary to uses in the existing uses in the area and expected future uses. As we all know, this has become a substantial employment center for the city with Conehell, the RMC, which has been there forever. But you've also got the brand new Grand Oaks Professional Park, which is anticipated and hoping to and will attract additional jobs, along with what exists already along Kirkpatrick Road. And of course, we always have to mention the proximity to 4085, Highway 62, and Highway 49 is not far from there. So it's certainly a reasonable use. I would add, just to touch on the comprehensive land use plan, we wholly support and are appreciative and endorse staff's recommendation. We certainly hope you do as well. And of course, the recommendation comes with a recommended motion that does acknowledge that it is technically inconsistent. But if you look at the map that's in front of you and compare that to the reality of how this area of the city has come to be, it's sort of charted its own course in a particularly functional way with the residential products and the residential development that's there in concert with all of the employment and institutional growth. That hasn't materialized in the way maybe that the plan had anticipated, but certainly in a way that serves the city well, and in a way that I think we should all support. And this proposal fits well within that, we believe, and hope to have. Hope you will agree and hope you will support this request. Happy to answer any questions. I know Mr. Eulis and Mr. Stoltz will answer just the same. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Before we ask any questions of Mr. Moffitt, are there any conflicts with any of the board members here concerning this matter? Any conflicts? All right. Mr. Moffitt, will these apartments mirror the Ethan Point type units. I think they're 3 stories, garden type apartments on 3 stories.
I would say, this is probably for that, yeah, but you're probably, yeah, I'll let Dennis.
My name is Dennis Eulis, I'm one of the owners of the property. So this time, we're actually looking at doing some 4-story stuff, so we do elevators and all the buildings. So have a lot of interest now in senior people looking for apartments and having fixed prices. So we're going to elevate all our buildings to be able to do that. By doing the elevator, they're so expensive, we're going to the 4th floor. But we still have very low density based on how many, we want to have a lot of open space, and we're providing that. So we're not really fighting to try to get 350 units a year. I just want a nice project, something to carry itself. And the corner lot we bought because we had a meeting with staff, and DOT said that lot would have a hard time ever having a street access. So I went to that lady to buy her lot. But negotiating on the other one over, I got one house against me over there, and the families, well, they've inherited, so they're all over the place. So I'm in negotiation with them. I don't know if I'll get it done or not, but I'm talking to that last lot over, that 2 acres. Will I get it done or not, I don't know, but if I do, I feel the corner.
The one on Kirkpatrick.
Exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah, so it is listed, and they're trying to sell it, but, you know, and we're talking. So they know what I'm doing, no problem with that, but we're trying to get somewhere together on it so we can clean that last lot up. But
Would you add more units if you did?
if I got to the next lot, maybe I'll put one more building in there because the lot's so expensive, maybe I'll grab another building just to look at the cost. I'm not saying I'm gonna do that because we're not far enough along for me to tell you I'm gonna buy it. But I didn't want you to think I've not talked to them people, because I have.
But if you,
Go ahead.
if you bought that lot, it would be in similar number of units.
It could be one more building, we could go.
But it
to
would be one more
48.
building, but what it would be consistent with the other buildings.
No doubt about that.
Right, it would be the copy.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for the applicant? Mr. Reynolds, anything? Okay.
Thank you.
Getting off easy tonight. Were there any phone calls concerning this rezoning?
No, sir.
Right. Is there anyone that wants to speak from the public? I guess we don't have anybody left. Do we? Okay, the zoning change will not affect any adjacent parcels with it?
No, sir.
Okay, and what is your recommendation?
So while this is recognizably inconsistent with the future land use designation, staff is recommending the rezoning request, similar to the reasons stated by the applicant. It is compatible with the surrounding uses and the land use trends that have occurred in the area. So it's option number 2 in your consistency statement sheet is what our recommendation is.
If you're ready for a motion, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to
Go right ahead, Mr. Kirkpatrick.
make a motion, recommend approval of the request to rezone properties from office and institutional OI to medium density residential MDR to high density residential HDR. The property is located on the southeast corner of the intersection of Grand Oaks Boulevard and Kirkpatrick Road. Address is 0 Kirkpatrick Road and 0 Grand Oaks Boulevard, consisting of Alamance County Tax Identification Numbers 112931 and 113189. While the request is inconsistent with the future land use map in section 4 land use of the comprehensive plan, and that it causes the area to have general industrial uses, the request is compatible with existing residential uses in the area. The action is reasonable in the public interest in that the comprehensive plan encourages a sustainable balance of land uses. The request is compatible with existing zoning and land uses in the area.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Would you do a roll call, please, Ms. Lawson?
Yes. Chair Parker,
Approved.
Vice Chair Kirkpatrick,
Approved.
Commission Member Beasley,
Approved.
Commission Member Black,
Approved.
Commission Member Roan,
Approved.
Commission Member Nelson,
Not approved.
Commission Member Rayner.
Approved.
Okay, the motion passes 6-1.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Moffitt. Now, we have 3 minutes for the last item.
How much money did you say?
$5.
On how many minutes?
10 minutes.
All right.
Not counting your questions.
Item number 8, UDOTA 5-22 on request of the City of Burlington, Mr. Chad Meadows, to present a Unified Development Ordinance text amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commission members. I'm Chad Meadows. I'm Principal of Code Right, and it's my pleasure to be back before you again. These 10 short minutes to cover this material. Go ahead and on to the next slide, please, Conrad, or whoever's driving over there. Are you driving, Jamie?
Won't we get in the PowerPoint?
There you go.
Hi.
Okay, thanks. As you can see, this is our 10th round of amendments. We are old hands at this. We have been working on the UDO for many, many years. And I'd like to think that, thank you, sir, we've gotten it down to a well-oiled machine. Essentially, our comments or our revisions are created because staff is working with applicants to try to improve the effectiveness of the ordinance, or staff has noticed somewhere in the ordinance where the language would benefit from greater precision, or the legal environment has changed because of the General Assembly. So we've got a blend of each of these before you guys tonight. There are 18 areas of revision across these 3 different types, and I'm going to talk briefly about them and answer your questions. And so the first is the addition of a new zoning permit procedure. We've got about 28 current procedures in the UDO. However, we do not have a review procedure for types of land uses that do not require a building permit, of which there are many. And so after a lot of discussion with staff, we've opted to incorporate a new zoning permit procedure that would be used solely for these things that don't require building permits, like sheds smaller than 144 square feet. We'd also use this procedure for public art and for murals. Okay, so there's a variety of different needs for this kind of permit procedure in place today. We're making further clarifications about the limited use rezoning application process, which has been wildly successful. I think most of your zoning applications tonight were limited use zoning, so that's good and encouraged by that. The current regulations ask the applicant to list the proposed uses and or the prohibited uses. And we just felt like it would be cleaner and more consistent if we simply ask the applicant to list the proposed uses and stop there. And so it's a pretty basic change that we're making.
Can we ask a question in the middle?
Absolutely.
We have been plagued with applicants who come in here and say they want 45 uses, which just infuriates me. That's not limited use, that's almost the whole damn thing.
Right, indeed.
And can we put in our UDO a limit to 10 uses? I mean, some of them are just outrageous, helicopter landing pads and all this stuff.
Right. I noticed that today, in one of the cases, there was a discussion about the things that we weren't going to permit, and it included things like helicopter landing pads and other kinds of uses that frankly weren't ever going to happen out there anyway. The issue that we've got on our hands here is how do we fetter the discretion? How do we tailor the range of allowable uses for one site and have that sort of approach work for another site? Can you limit the range or the number of uses? Yes, you can. Should you is a different question. Now, this is be something that we would need to explore. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that somebody wanted to come in and do a limited use industrial site, right? An LILU or an MILU. Could we have standards in there that said, listen, we think that the range of uses should be 10, not 45? Yeah, you can. But which 10? And what if that 11th use is one that's really good? So that's the difficulty that you've got in trying to bring some limitation to that legislative discretion. You know, it's hoped that the applicant would self-police themselves and limit the range of uses to the minimum necessary to get the approval. That's what the limited use is all about, is to try to create that possibility for the applicant to get an approval in light of maybe some resistance from surrounding neighbors. So, you know, in some cases, I think they do that. In other cases, when they don't necessarily need to, then they're not limiting. Answer to your question, can you limit them? Yes. Should you limit them? I don't know. That would be something that we would need to explore and talk about some more.
Well, think about a maximum of 20 uses in your thought process. The guy knows what he's going to put there.
Indeed he does. Indeed he does.
He knows what's going there. So, you know, why come here with 45 uses when he knows that one little pearl is in there?
Sure, sure.
You know, number 18 is the
Right,
one he really
right.
wants.
Understood.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Can I interject for just a second? I know I'm taking my time here.
It's okay.
Tonight, for example, when we were looking at this list of 45, is there a way that you can group these into different sections? For example, I don't know, here is warehouse, wholesale sales, you know, like,
Yeah.
can you drop this down to maybe brackets of 5 or 10, and they can choose, I want this one, and instead of having 40, they're really only looking at maybe 5 of the 40.
Right.
But, you know, it's like here, the helicopter landing pad would go with aircraft manufacturing and things like that. And so they asked for column 8.
We do have, so first off, I appreciate the question and I appreciate the spirit of trying to make the ordinance better. That's what we've all been focused on for these many years. And I hope the ordinance is getting easier. Hopefully y'all's meetings are getting better. We have a ready-made approach to do just exactly what you're requesting. Remember, in the use table, we have things called use types, and then we have things called use categories. And inside the categories are one or more different kinds of use types. So we could explore the possibility of working at the use category level if that was something that you guys wanted to do. I think it'll make your meetings maybe a little bit quicker and easier, but I'm not sure that it's going to make that much difference for the caliber of the proposal. And I worry that using the use categories is probably going to confuse the public. So that's, I would ask you, let us talk about that, let us think about that, and come back with something that we think is going to be easier on you, but not mystifying to the public.
So maybe 20 max.
Okay.
And that would cover everything that most people could come up with.
Let us explore how that might work. And as you know, we're always back in front of you. We expect to be back in front of you in January with the next round. So, yes, but they're going to be better, I promise.
Yeah.
You know, on that thought, and I like the groupings and I like the idea, I think that staff, this limited, the limited use thing seems to be working exceptionally well. And I mean, we can't, necessarily know if we put groupings in or list or whatever, but, I mean, I'm just making an assumption here, that I think that you guys are guiding the applicants. They know what they're gonna do. They've sent you maybe a conceptual plan, maybe not. Maybe you're guiding them to go the limited use way, and that's not a bad thing. But if somebody wants to keep 35, I mean, they have that right. Or if they want to keep 45.
They do.
But am I wrong?
No, so staff does meet with the applicants on an informal basis.
Right.
Obviously, the choice of what they're seeking is theirs. We can offer guidance, we can offer suggestions, but it's their
Right.
call at the end of the day in terms of which uses they're proposing. I think this example of what happened tonight with Keck was a great example where the public came out, and the public who is, you know, adjacent to the properties had concerns regarding uses. Nobody came and spoke up against it, which was the opposite of what we heard at the last meeting.
Right, because
They did a good job.
they did a great job at the meeting. Anyway.
Yeah.
What is the purpose for having so many uses? If
So-
they know what they want, why are they not forced to say that?
Well, that's a good question. You know, the UDO establishes a series of zoning districts across the city's jurisdiction, and I believe there's, what, 15, 16 of them, plus or minus. So the full range of uses that you could ever conceive has to slot within those 15 or 16 different designations that we have. And that's why there's so many different uses. We try to be sufficiently broad so that people aren't coming before the city saying, I want to do this use, there's no district that would allow me to do that. So we work on an approach to zoning district designations that allow us to accommodate as many potential uses as possible. And that's usually how the zoning process works. We added the limited use process in recognition of applicants who said, I don't want to go through a plan development process. I don't want to spend all of that money negotiating. I just want to do this one use or this two use or this three use. Do we have a vehicle for that? The limited use zoning option rose up as our alternative to that. We think that it's working fairly well. I would encourage you to, not necessarily add more zoning districts. That's only going to make the UDO more complicated. If you wanted to reduce the range of allowable uses within each zoning district, then that means either you have to add more districts or we're going to have to remove uses. And that will be more complexity, not necessarily more efficiency. Does that make sense? I'm not sure that I've answered your question well.
Well, if it, like the man who was talking about the light industrial estate, I mean, he told you what he was thinking about. But there are many people who come in and say they're just sort of buying a line and they don't know, which makes you think they just don't want to tell you what it is. Because, and why are they able to do that? Just camouflage it within 40 or 50 different categories.
Well, I mean, that's the way that the North Carolina zoning law is written. We have these things called conventional zoning districts, and they're written to accommodate whatever range of uses the local government wishes to permit within that zoning district. There are lots of examples across the state of communities that do a conditional zoning district or a limited use zoning district where the range of uses is limited voluntarily by the applicant. So that option is there. But generally speaking, here in North Carolina, when you establish a zoning district, you are allowed, authorized, to accommodate any of the range of uses that the city will allow to be in that district. I mean, that's just your right under that zoning district designation. Can you change it? Yes. But if you change it, then you're going to have more people coming in saying, I can't fit my use in this zoning district. I have to rezone, or I need you to do a text amendment to write this new zoning district for this use that I can't have in the suite of districts that you have today. So that will invariably result in more work on your part, not less.
Well, I want you to work on this so that we don't have somebody coming in with 45 proposed uses.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think we all understand that a lot of times these are done to veil what we're going to do because it may affect the cost of my property if somebody knows what I'm going to do. So I'm going to kind of keep my cards close to my, just like a city doesn't want to let you know that we're working on a deal with Mercedes because Greensboro finds out and they're going to come in and try to sweep it up. So that's always going to be that balancing act of me not really wanting everybody to know what I'm going to do yet because it may raise up the price of my property that I'm trying to buy. And it's a game. We understand that.
Well, I say let's try to get it down to 20 uses in the game.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think you can categorize these into groups and say that somebody sits there and we're looking at building an office. We're not going to put in airports or things like that. Or we're going to put in storage buildings. So I'm about, we're limited to these number of uses. I understand, I agree with you, and I think it helps. I kind of disagree with you in that I think the public would appreciate it more because if you limited it, now they know there's not going to be a heliport or there's not going to be, this, that, and the other. They're probably okay with what might be left. But if you throw out 45, they're going to panic until they narrow it down to something that they don't concern themselves with.
Sure. And I would say that if the public does get panicked, and if the public does interact with the applicant, then the system is working.
Well, that's good, yeah, but let them work it, like they had that meeting and.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a great example. Okay.
Okay. Understood and noted, and we'll continue to, I get your point, which is be consistent with the intent of this, which is to limit the range of uses. Understood.
Back on the clock.
Thank you. We've added electric vehicle charging stations as a means of providing, as an example for a planned development district enhancement. Remember that for the planned development, the expectation is that you exceed the minimum standards that would apply to another conditional zoning or conventional zoning district. So one of the examples of how you might do that is including EV charging stations. We've also included them as a sustainable development incentive. If you provide EV charging stations and, frankly, other forms of sustainable development incentives in Chapter 7, then you can avail yourselves of, increased density or increased height or some other kind of relief under the ordinance. So there's an incentive there. Those EV charging stations have been brought in under that rubric. We've added tiny homes as a use type to the ordinance, and there are 3 flavors of them. There is a tiny home that is manufactured elsewhere and brought on site. It's on a chassis, and it's usually put on a permanent foundation. So it's very much like a mobile home, okay, or a manufactured home. The difference is it's much smaller. We have capped the size at 500 square feet. Then you have these things called movable tiny homes. These are tiny homes like you see on HGTV or on television. People have wheels on these things and they tow them around. Okay, so we're recognizing that there are these things out there called movable tiny homes that people want to keep the wheels on. That's fine. The thing to know there is that's a vehicle. It's not a building. And therefore, the standards that apply to recreational vehicles apply to movable tiny homes.
So it has a license on it?
It does not have a license on it, but you may not live in it permanently here in the city of Burlington because we do not allow people to live in vehicles. It can be in an RV park for a set amount of time, like any other RV. Finally, we've added a site-built tiny home, which is one that you would actually stick-built or modular, because we treat those the same, on site. And again, it is subject to the that 500 square foot maximum size limitation. And so to just kind of, this is our initial entree into allowing tiny homes in the city. We're doing it because we've heard a lot from a lot of different people about the housing crisis and the lack of housing units that are available across the city. So we want to incorporate these. Are these groundbreaking rules? No. This is our first sort of foray into it. And we've taken, I would say, a very conservative approach. For example, we only allow manufactured tiny homes in the same district where you can do manufactured homes. And of course, conditional residential. Site-built tiny homes are permissible wherever you wanted to build a single-family detached home. So no big shake there. And then the movable, only permitted inside of the GB district and the conditional industrial, like a recreational vehicle park. Okay? We've added some standards to these. You gotta have a parking place for each one. We've limited the number of accessory uses to 2. There's a set of definitions in the ordinance about what a tiny home is. We would expect that over time, these standards will further evolve. And in what ways we're not sure yet, but we wanted to get started and have these kinds of standards in here. So those are incorporated for you guys to look at. Okay? Questions on tiny homes?
Does this mean that if there is a residential neighborhood with houses, people could put one in the backyard? Because there was something a couple of weeks ago where it could be half the size of the existing house?
That is correct. Could I have a tiny home in my backyard as an accessory dwelling unit? And the answer to the question is yes, if that's permitted in the zoning district where accessory dwelling units are permitted, that yes, you could.
How about if they were Airbnbs?
Short-term rentals, that is a different matter. Right now, today, We do not have any standards in the UDO to regulate short-term rentals. The General Assembly has been very clear with local governments across the state that their discretion in the regulation of short-term rentals is very limited. We have talked quite a bit with staff about going into and addressing some short-term rental issues. We may not have a registry, okay, so that means we can't keep track of who's doing a short-term rental. That's not permitted under North Carolina law. We could have some enforcement provisions in place. You'll probably need to hire 10, maybe 12 additional enforcement personnel to enforce those regulations, and they'll need to work on nights and weekends because that's when short-term rentals occur. So it's definitely something to think about. It's definitely something to walk into carefully. Today, we do not have any short-term rental regulations yet. I will also tell you that this matter is still under deep litigation in the North Carolina Court of Appeals. This is not a finished law yet. We don't know what's going to happen with this, and the General Assembly is regularly changing and bringing forth proposed legislation, again, seeking to exempt local government authority on these use types. And so as that continues, you know, if a bill does pass, we're not going to be able to regulate them at all. And we'll just have to keep our eye on things with that. It's a great question, and I wish I had a better answer, but we're just not there as a society yet. How do we regulate these things? Okay?
Back on the clock.
Moving on, parking revisions. We have a guest parking requirement for attached single-family development of 0.25 spaces per unit. We spent a lot of time looking at the Institute of Traffic Engineering parking standards, and the sense is that that additional guest parking requirement is overly expensive. It's not necessary. It's creating more impervious surface than we need, and that, you know, I would just tell you, generally there's a movement across planning that's been in place for years to reduce the number of off-street parking spaces required. It's very consumptive of land, it's very expensive, and it's frankly not needed in many cases. So we're suggesting that that guest space requirement be removed from attached residential. We have increased the floor area of a farmer's market that would require a parking space. It's currently 300, we've bumped it up to 600, right? So that makes it that you have to have fewer parking spaces for a farmer's market. And then finally, just some additional clarity about some kinds of non-residential uses that are exempt from bike parking standards, like you're not going to ride your bike to Home Depot necessarily, or you're not going to ride your bike to maybe a warehouse facility or something like that. So the likelihood that you need bike parking spaces is limited and reduced, and so we've made those adjustments in the ordinance in the bike parking section based on what we saw in ITE. Okay. Okay. Ability to use prohibited exterior materials on secondary facades. Okay, so under the commercial design standards, we have a litany of use of exterior materials that are not permitted on primary facades. Smooth face concrete block that's not painted, galvanized metal, unpainted plywood. These are examples of materials that would not be permissible on primary building facades. Okay. There is a movement afoot in the construction industry to incorporate more metal cladding for buildings. Not the metal cladding of today's Butler building, and not galvanized metal like you would see on somebody's barn, but rather something in between. But it's very complicated, and it's very hard to understand when this is going to be a very popular material or how you work with it. All of these things are coming. We're having challenges with applicants who are wanting to use this prohibited material on the secondary facade. What's the secondary facade? It's the sides of the building or the rear of the building if you can see that building facade from a street or from public parkland. Okay? What we want to do is split the difference. And allow people to use these prohibited materials on secondary facades if they incorporate the higher standard for articulation and the higher standard for windows. So, you want to have a metal building on the sides? That's fine. You got to include the offset projections and the windows that we would require for a primary facade. And we felt like that was a fair and balanced approach to this. Yeah, it's prohibited, but we've got a higher quality construction anyway, so hopefully that's an improvement. Flag heights. We've had a lot of requests for bigger flags, and essentially, after an awful lot of research, we're suggesting 2 changes to flags. Okay, flags are treated as signs, by the way. The first change is an increase of maximum height from 25 feet to 30 feet. Okay, and the second is an increase in maximum size from 24 square feet to 40 square feet. A 40 square foot flag is a 5 by 8 flag. 95% of the flags you've ever seen in your life are 5 by 8 or less. There are a couple of differences. They're out there. You've seen them on the side of the interstate. But by and large, most flags are 5 by 8 or smaller, which is a 40 square foot flag. So we feel like this is right on target with the vast, vast majority of flags that are out there. Okay?
This is for all types of flags?
This is for all types of flags that are regulated by the ordinance. Okay? Government flags, which are flags that are flown by a government institution or on property owned by a government institution, are exempt from the sign rules. Okay? We do not regulate American flag, North Carolina flag, City of Burlington flag, because to do so would require us to see the flag. We're not allowed to regulate content. We have content-based sign ordinance, which means we can't say American flags can be this big and everybody else can be that big, because that requires staff to see the flag to regulate it, and that's a content-based standard which is not constitutional under the Reed ruling from a few years ago. It's a great question. Sometime when you're really bored, we can talk about the decision in Reed v. Gilbert and what that's done to sign regulations. It's definitely something we've talked about a great deal over the years. And this content-based standard is very difficult to meet, but it's one that every local government in the country has to follow. Questions on flags? Okay.
Can you change that 40-foot minimum on maximum to 5 by 9.5? 5 by 9.5? Yep. Standard military flag.
What would the square footage be?
47.5, I think.
I think we could make the adjustment to 48 square feet. If that's something that you wanted to suggest as part of the motion, we can absolutely incorporate that. And what we would request be done is that request be rolled into your motion, and that we share that with the elected officials that, planning and zoning thinks these amendments are okay, they want to make a change, and one of those would be increasing the maximum square footage for flags from 40 square feet to 48 square feet. And we're absolutely.
That's nitpicky, but it comes from, I own one, it was my uncle's.
Sure.
And I've hung it on the side of the house. Right after 9/11, so.
We really do try to be accommodating. We don't just sit around and make up rules to make up rules. We try to find a way to do that that's a fair and balanced approach, and I don't think 48 square feet is inappropriate. Okay? Got a few more to cover. These are a little bit easier. When we drafted the UDO, you guys were the Planning and Community Development Department, which you're not anymore. Now you're the Planning Department, so we made those changes. There was a bit of clarity necessary in the MDR and HDR districts regarding zero lot line setbacks for single-family attached uses. In other words, you couldn't have a zero lot line setback for a townhouse in those two districts, which is wrong, and so we've corrected that. We're making a reduction, or we're removing the maximum multifamily building length standard, which is 250 linear feet in cases when that multifamily building includes a central dining or central recreation facility in the structure, okay? So if you have a central dining room or central rec facility, you don't have to worry about the maximum building length. I mentioned earlier public art and murals. They currently require site plans. We're going to move that to zoning permits for purposes of simplicity. Fences. This is proposed in light of some creative planning that we've seen in applications around the city. A couple of changes. One, if you're going to put a fence within a required perimeter buffer, it needs to be within 10 feet of the lot line. Okay, so it's got to be fairly close to the lot line. The other thing that you have to do is if you want to take advantage of the option to reduce that perimeter buffer width from its minimum width to something less than that, then you must extend the fence the full span of the buffer in order to get that credit. Okay? So, like I said, some creative reading that we've seen recently, and that standard is proposed to address some of that creative reading. 40-foot type D buffers along interstates. So along 4085 and off ramps, we're requiring a type D 40-foot wide landscaping buffer, also along railroad rights of way. Okay? There's a couple of minor typos on pages 5-114 and 7-6. Yes, we're still dealing with them, but there's only 2 this time. Banners, type of sign. Our current provision says your banner length is tied to the span of your building, your front building facade. And this was proving to be complicated, overly complicated. And after a lot of discussion with code enforcement, we made the decision to suggest a 10-foot maximum for banners, okay, instead of using the facade length ratio. So if you want a banner in Burlington and you guys approve this amendment, then your banner can be 10 feet long or less. Okay. Another creative reading, passive open space. We are suggesting that passive open space not be incorporated in a subdivision in ways that allow applicants to reduce the street setbacks. What we were seeing was people platting narrow strips of passive open space in order to be set back from the open space, the 2 or 3 feet that's required from the open space, but they're still within what would normally be the street setback. So that sort of was a workaround to our street setbacks. We are closing that loophole. So that's what that standard is for. Finally, some other clarification. Secondary building walls are walls that are visible from streets and public recreation lands, not just those that face. Okay, so that's an important distinction. You're driving down the road, you look over to one side or the other. You do see some of the side of the building. It is visible to you from the public realm. The standards currently say face, and that was a problem. That wasn't working. So what we've done for clarity's sake is clarify that if that wall is visible, then it's a secondary building wall. Okay? I know I'm over my 10 minutes on that. Questions on precision? Well, we got one more area to cover, but it'll be fast.
Right now, you're at 16 minutes, brother.
See, told you.
Okay, let's keep going.
Precision, question on precision? None? Last, please.
Unfortunately, I do have one question.
Absolutely, that's why we're here.
And this is probably a show of my ignorance of this particular one, but
No such thing.
can you clarify the public art and mural one, why it would move from a site plan to a zoning permit?
Why are we suggesting that be done?
Yeah.
Because somebody might want to paint a sign on the side of a building, and we currently require them to file a site plan for that.
Yeah, it's a little much.
Yeah, so we thought, well, that's kind of crazy. What else should we use? Oh, well, we don't have anything else. Well, let's have a zoning permit. Okay, let's have a zoning permit, and that's what we did.
What does it fall under? What zoning, what are those 15 or 16 categories that you're talking about that would fall under?
It's not treated as a principal or an accessory use, it's just treated as a site feature. So there are no district-based limitations on where you can have a mural or where you couldn't. If you've got a building wall, you can have a mural there. There are some mural standards that are in place, but we don't treat it as a use type.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. Last change. Session law 2022-62 changed the appellate body for subdivisions. Hopefully we've gotten squared away on this there down on Jones Street. It used to be that those decisions, I'm talking about expedited subdivisions, preliminary plats, any kind of subdivision here in Burlington, because staff reviews and decides them all. Back in the day, that used to go to the Board of Adjustment. Then the General Assembly thought, well, let's send these to Superior Court instead. And we did that for a while, and now we've decided to go back to Board of Adjustment. So we've had to go back and make that change a I'll show you the language if you want to see it, but essentially I've just changed the appellate body back to Board of Adjustment from Superior Court in accordance with Session Law 2262. Okay. Questions on legal? Discuss as necessary if we need to. We're anticipating going to City Council work session on 11/14/22. One of the suggestions would be, if you want so chose, that we would bump flag size up from 40 to 48. And we have notes about your request to figure out a way to fetter limited use applications to fewer than, to some kind of manageable limit. So we'll think about that and share that with council. Our hearing on this set of amendments would be December 6th. And as I mentioned at the head of this discussion, we do expect to come back to you in February. Those zoning district tables that you've seen, we're changing those dramatically. And in ways that will be better and more intelligible and more clear in terms of how setbacks are applied.
We have been making all these adjustments to the UDO, but we still have the old paper version that, we were given 4 years ago.
We'll need a new one.
What'd you say?
You need a new one.
Well, when are you gonna quit giving us changes so we can get a new one?
Probably never.
Payroll.
Probably never. And one of the reasons why probably never is because the General Assembly continues to make law and continues to change the rules. Every time, in every single one of those 10 prior amendments, there was a statutory change coming out of Jones Street that we were addressing. Every single one.
Well, I would say after this group, we ought to get a new UDO.
A paper copy?
Get it online.
Yeah, if folks want a paper copy, just let us know. If
Okay.
you want to raise your hand.
So y'all change, you change the UDO after every one of these?
Absolutely, and on the website, on the city's website, on the planning department, it's got a list of every single red line version, so you can click and see what changes were made, so.
Okay.
We worked very hard down in the lower right-hand corner to see the last updated date so that everybody knows exactly where we are in terms of keeping current. And yeah, I mean, I think it's not a bad idea for you guys to get, maybe a paper copy every year or so. But that's obviously nothing to do with me.
Okay.
Questions?
You need a motion?
Is there a motion?
I would accept the suggestions.
What about the 48 feet?
I'll address that later.
Okay.
Well, you ain't got much time.
Needs to be in your motion.
Yeah. You mean at a different meeting?
Well, then,
I think it's a military flag. I think it's a very respectful
Well,
request.
yeah.
I mean, that's why I'm saying that. I
general
think
research on flags and flagpole heights, a 40-foot flagpole should support a 6-foot by 10-foot flag. That's 60 square feet. And maximum is 8 by 12. And the flag should be, if a single flag is on a pole, the flag length should be 1/4 the height of the pole. So you're talking about a 10-foot long by 6-foot wide flag would be appropriate size for a 40-foot flagpole.
So you'd like to see a 40-foot flagpole and a 60-foot flag?
Well, 60 square foot. Yeah, that's, and I think the tradition on that is that you've got such a tiny flag on the pole that you're diminishing the value of the flag.
That's never been our intent. Again, when we were handed this ruling from the Supreme Court, we can no longer make distinctions between a state flag or a United States flag. And so we can allow a 10 by 6, American flag, or we can allow a 10 by 6 that is gray flag. And that's, I mean, that's the world that we're operating in, and that's why you're seeing those limitations on flags. It's not because we're anti-flag.
They don't make those, do they?
Not in Burlington.
There's a little manufacturer
It might have to do with, selling flags.
I thought the military thing was But anyway, that's it.
I think that we're open to that. I'm not sure that there's an issue with that.
Can you just add
That's-
military flags?
If you go and look up flagpole height and flag, it's 1/4 the height of the pole is the length of the flag. That's the maximum size you would fly on.
Right, I hear what you're saying. I would suggest we go with a set number so that staff isn't out there trying to administer this and having to measure with an inclinometer how tall the flagpole is. I think it's better for us to just set a standard and, have that standard be, a level that you're comfortable with, but that doesn't require staff to have special tools
Understand that.
or special.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
But the military flag is that
And like-
standard, you said it wasn't, I think that's respectful to the military.
Indeed, but we can't use the words military flag.
I get that,
Look at
I
it.
get that, but that's the size of the military flag is.
All I move we accept the UDO with the amended flag size being 60 square feet.
And did you want to increase the flagpole height?
Hold up, 40,
Okay.
you said 40 feet, right?
Correct. It's set at 30 right now. I think you wanted to suggest 40.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
So,
We got a motion. Is there a second? I'll second. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Have a roll call.
Sure. Chair Parker,
Approved.
Vice Chair Kirkpatrick,
approved.
Commission Member Beasley,
Approved.
Commission Member Black,
Approved.
Commission Member Brown,
Approved.
Commission Member Nelson, and Commission Member Rayner.
Approved.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. 40 foot tall, 60 square feet.
60 square feet.
Got it. Figure out a way to feather this list of
Yeah.
limited
Let's
uses.
do that.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Real quick though, your motion to approve is based on the consistency statement sheet in option number 1.
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay. And let the record state
Let
that.
the record reflect that.
All right, thank you.
Chad, thank you.
Thank you.
Huh?
I'll bring it next time. In fact, maybe I'll bring donuts.
So let it be written, so let it be done.
Sorry.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
It's already been moved.